see it. I'm plugged in, but we're not seeing any. Okay, now that we're past our technical difficulties here, we're gonna call a meeting of the Washington Water Authority Board. If I can get the right folder up. April 20th. Call the roll, please. Go ahead. Bo Speed.
Here.
Larry DeLozier.
Here.
David Bollinger.
Here.
Doug Chambers.
Here.
Nathan Prince.
Here.
Howard Carter.
Here.
Okay, we have a full board present. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Any additions, completions, or deletions?
Make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Bollinger, second by DeLozier to approve the agenda as presented. Next item, approval of the 3:16 minutes. Each one of y'all received these by email. I've got them up on the screen, so is there any noted corrections, exceptions to the minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Have a motion by Bollinger to approve as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
And that was Mr. Prince. All in favor?
Aye.
Against, like sign. Thank you, gentlemen. I want to take just a moment here. I forgot, but we have a very distinguished individual in the back. We've got Judge Deakins with us today, so thank you, Judge, for taking time out of your busy schedule. Next item is approval of the financials as presented to us earlier by email. And let me get to those. Let's start with the balance sheet. And if I can rotate them. How do you rotate in Dropbox? Well, everybody just kind of stand sideways.
There's a button set up, edit there,
Where at?
the top left somewhere up, I think.
See, there should be a rotation right there. Yeah. Oh, well. Not a lot of change, basically, in our overall budget, or the balance sheets. Let's now look at the P&L. And we can compare these any way you want to. Do y'all want to look at them both by budget and by prior year performance, or again, I mean, I don't know why we can't change these things. Zach, you got any assistance on how to rotate something as presented in Google?
Top left is-
Well, that's where I keep finding, but I don't find a way to turn that. There's no rotation provision.
Yeah, I don't either. You could try downloading it and open it.
Well, I just don't understand why you have to download something
Right.
in its native format. Whoops, wait a minute.
Whoa.
Is there anything down All right, that's a little bit better. Okay, this is comparison to previous year. As you can see, our income is pretty much where it was at last year in total income. Gross profit's up somewhat. However, is there any particular expense item that anybody has some questions? I will point out one thing. Historically, the WWA has been involved for whatever reasons. I can't find any good one at this point, and nobody else has been able to point them out to me, why we would be involved in road crossings, borings, open cuts, whatever. Because we have no authority or responsibility as far as that goes, determining the standards to do those. And each individual entity, whether it be the county or the city, has their own set of rules and regs, and whoever, whether it's us or an individual requesting a crossing, has to have a permit filled out. I did talk to the county road department and said it had been sometimes in the past, WWA had failed to forget that even they needed a permit, and they'd find out about it after the fact. So we're out of the road crossing business, folks. And the way it was presented before, another reason, if you look at item 4040, I wish this thing would blow up just a little bit bigger, but we would take and charge somebody for a road crossing, and then we would turn around and pay an independent contractor to do the actual road bore. And so I asked our accountant to just net down in the expenses. You'll see road crossing expenses is now year-to-date zeroed because she's moved everything up into the road crossing fees. And last month even, we lost money because we got charged more than we charged the customer. But year-to-date, there's a number in there, but we don't need to be in the business, because when someone comes in there to want to acquire water, our forte is to provide water, not do road crossings. And so everybody understand that going forward. We made it notified to any new applicants. Matter of fact, we had 3 applicants, I believe it was, that had already paid for a road crossing. We refunded them and gave them a name or two of some people to go see, and told them they could do whatever they wanted to within the provisions of the entity of which they were crossing, whether it be county or city. Other than that, everything pretty much stays the same until you get to the bottom line and you say, oh my God, we have lost $300,000 last month. Well, not really, folks. Historically, and I don't know, Judge being an accountant, maybe he can give us some insight on that, but our accountant didn't believe that there would be any requirements. But the presentation of financials historically by this entity has disregarded the depreciation expense. Although it's a non-cash item, most generally any business that I've ever looked at shows depreciation within their financials, and that's what we've done. I'm trying to find where, there it is, depreciation expense, $368,000. That posting was done this month. So if you take the 368 and add back the 305, you've made some money, but we present that. If the board so chooses and directs me to do so, we can pull depreciation back out. I've just tried to present it like I've been accustomed to in the business world. And I've been on other boards similar to this one, and we always showed depreciation. So just be mindful of that when somebody says, well, you guys are losing a bunch of money. We're not really losing money other than a non-cash item there, which we can discuss that at great length. Any other discussions about the financials? And if not, I'm going to back up to the balance sheet, because I want to talk about something there now that we determined we're going to have to download that. So let me get it downloaded. Okay. Nope, that's the wrong one. I apologize, ma'am and ladies. Okay, the total bank accounts that we have right now at the end of March 31 totaled something close to $3.8 million, which compared to the last year, it's within $45,000. But you will notice on the last year's balances versus this year's balances, the number of accounts in which we hold money have been greatly reduced because after discussing with auditors and our interim accountant, we found that although there is some requirements for restricted accounts, we've left those in place, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense because most of the other accounts we had were just moving them from that account to the operations account when we had their major expenditures, which are all paid from the operational account. So right now, for an example, you'll see that we've got 200 or about 2.3 million in the operations fund. The question that I had was, why do we have, in this case, some cases, no interest bearing, and other cases, maybe 0.5%? I think we had one that's actually making 1%. So we got with Arvest, and I'm putting it up there. I sent this to y'all earlier in an email. But with the current financial conditions like they are, there's some pretty attractive CD rates. And in discussing this with the bank, they suggested, and I agree, that we should ladder some of the excess funds that we got in the operations account and some of the other accounts perhaps, but ladder them in such a way that we could benefit from the higher interest rates. For an example, we'd put some in maybe 3-month CDs, some maybe in 6 months, and some maybe in a year. But even if we had to, for whatever emergency reasons, there would be minimal downside because we'd lose some interest on that particular CD, but we wouldn't lose our principal. So if that sounds reasonable to the board, maybe we could get some discussion on it and ideas of downsides that we may have overlooked.
I think, Chairman, the interest rate is not so much you're talking about before, but for CDs and that haven't earned before, that's all it was paying before.
If you don't
So-
mind, put your hands down because it's blocking your.
Okay, so the interest rates now, everything is paying pretty good. Before, like you were talking about, the 0.5% or 1% was all it was paying. So the CDs that we do now, I think everybody's CD, there's just like Arvest has got out there, everybody's CD it's worth investing now. Where before it wasn't, 0.5%, and then you couldn't see it for, couldn't mess with it for 12 months. But everything's changing now, so the interest rate's good.
What,
So you're talking about doing a 3 months, so much in 3 months, so much in 12 months.
correct. To add, and the email before you that was forwarded, in my personal experience with business, a sweep account is commonly used to maximize your interest. Unfortunately, a governmental account, I was informed, is not qualified to be use a sweep account, which a sweep account typically doesn't give you quite as high a rate, but it gives you the flexibility to basically sweep all your excess cash and earn a higher rate than a regular checking account might. But that's off the option, so I'm back to it. We've got we got the choice, and I think a little later we'll discuss maybe some capital projects we got. I think we can easily come up with a number to break that up. So Arvest, which is holding our operations accounts, just waiting on guidance from us, and if the board grants us that, we'll go ahead and take care of doing the laddering based off of what we think will be required out there. So if, I
I'll
guess,
make a motion that we, review those CD rates and stair step them.
ladder 'em.
Ladder them.
Okay. Have a motion by Mr. Delozer,
I'll second that.
second by Mr. Bolger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, item 5, manager report. Zach, let's hear from you.
How's it going? Want to give a quick overview of what's going on in Washington Water. I know we've had a lot of interesting topics in emails, so I'm sure we've got a good discussion base. So I'm going to go through some of these basic numbers, and if anybody wants to hear any one of them in more detail, feel free to interrupt and let me know. In the month of March, we had 46 new customers, which brings our total customer accounts to 7,775. Moving into unaccounted for water, that continues to be an issue for Washington Water. We did sell about $25.5 million. We purchased $78.6 million, which was our unaccounted for water, about 68%, which is very high. From an operationals perspective, we completed 260 work orders, which is a 50 count increase from last month. Did 98 plumbing inspections, which is a 63 count increase from last month, and then total construction location we had 303, which is a 53 point increase from last month. No major water line size distribution changes from the last report, and at least on my book, I've got 3 larger capital improvements projects that are going on. We are going to talk about those. It looks like on the agenda in a little bit more detail, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview. Highway 265 continues to be under construction. Total estimated cost, and that's a little bit over 1.1 mil. We've got a drop dead completion date of September 13th, 2023. But I think we're going to actually be finishing up construction sometime in the next 6 weeks. So from there, we can move on to the funding process and project closeout. So no anticipation of that being an issue for reimbursement. Highway 170, which is being handled by Garver, outside consult. They are here, and I'm sure they can speak to that a little bit later. But and then finally, we've now started to look at the Goose Creek repair under the Illinois. Numbers on that one are still very, very preliminary, but talking to Garver, that's about, got that pegged right now at about 1 million. We're hoping to bring that down, though, once we get to the design phase. So that's the manager's report. Does anybody have any questions? And if not, I'll move on to the next section.
Does any of the board have questions or comments for Mr.
What was
Zach's
it?
presentation?
I do. What was the percent of water loss in January?
64%, I believe.
What was it in February?
February, we're down to 59.
And in March?
March would tick back up to 68.
So we lost more water in March than we did in January when we had the big leak under the river.
We lost 65 million in January. In March, we lost something closer to 50. So total volume's down compared to January, although we didn't sell as much water in March as we did the month before.
But to Mr. Bolger's point, 68% is more than 64%.
Sure.
Regardless of whether your water volume's up, down, or sideways, your percentage loss is higher in March than it was in January.
Sure, understood.
So you're saying that because we sold less water, percentages went up?
No.
Not necessarily, no. There was a large volume. We did sell a lot of water in January compared to the other month. We actually sold 10 million more gallons in January, but the overall percentage loss did tick up over March compared to February.
Well, I think I sent out an email or two about it, but
I think
68% is totally unbelievable and totally unacceptable.
Ludicrous.
So can you give me an idea of how many water leaks we fixed in the last 30 days?
I don't have the count in front of me. I do have a count of what's active now as far as leaks we do know about. I'd say typically we fix 2 to 3 to 4 a day. So multiply that by a 20-day work week. What is that, 60 leaks a month? Right now, as far as active leaks go, I've got the list and I've counted 3, 8, 9. I've got 11, all of them being smaller service line leaks.
How
And
long
those are
have
the ones
those
we know
11
about.
been on the books as far as known?
As far as known, yes. That's
How,
and that-
how long have you known about them?
Good question. A lot of these were booked here recently, and then the last week. I've got one service line leak that is several weeks old that needs to be fixed.
To add to Mr. Prince's question, prior to about 2 weeks ago, the service order, work order system was non-existent in this entity, in that if you asked that same question 2 weeks ago, you'd be hard pressed to get an answer. Now, when a service or a leak or a service for that matter of any kind is found, it is reported through a common system along with the locates and other such items of action. But again, Zach, I misunderstood, but how many actual leaks do you have on the open board?
1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 10, hard count,
10?
10.
Do you know what size lines those are in?
Actually, I looked at these this morning, they're all service lines, so.
How do we
1-inch
know that
lines.
they're all on service lines? When you got a service line connected to a main line, if you have a leak that's in a road ditch, how do you know if that's coming out of the service line or the road line?
Yeah, you're not wrong. I don't know with certainty. I do know mainline leaks are usually identified via our SCADA system. So if a main line does break or leak, it'll pull down pressure and we can see it sooner. Service line leaks typically don't have the same impact unless the corp's blown out. Just looking through them, I would believe that these were probably service line leaks. Until we get in the ground, we won't know for sure. You're not wrong.
I would disagree with you in some point, because in a prior lifetime I was involved in another water system. We had a mainline situation, which was nothing more than a pressure corp that had come out of it, but it leaked for years. And as a matter of fact, we thought it was an underground spring. But lo and behold, one day, we actually done a little investigation, and so leaks on main lines aren't always detected by SCADA. And I would like to just add my 2 cents worth to this, gentleman, but if you talk to most water systems, if you've got one that says they've got a 10% water loss, that's exceptional. Probably 20 to 25% might be close to the industry average. 68, you ought to hang your head in shame. And at this point, I would also point out to the public, and it's available, which it should have been for some time, but the Arkansas Health Department requires a sanitary report once every 3 years. And in fact, I provided you, as well as the public, in the packet, the last 3 sanitary reports. And this leak issue is not a new occurrence. Beginning back in 2012, I believe it was 40% and change. 2015, it popped up to something higher than that. 2018, it was over 50%. And yet here we are looking at a 68% water loss just for 1 month, but whether it's 1 month, 1 year, a significant problem. And so I have asked Zach to prepare a little bit of plan of action, and do you want to present that at this time, or is that somewhere else in the agenda? I think I'd ask for it to be presented at the same time. Are you prepared to talk about your plan
Yeah,
of action?
I've got some stuff we can talk about. So,
All right.
moving on to the update on leak abatement program. So, 68% water loss is a terrible number. I'm looking at the service line leaks. I don't see a lot of percentage drop on what's been reported right? The stuff we know about is, if they were fixed tomorrow, I don't know if this number would come down very far. So the real issue here is how do we find leaks that we don't know about, or how are they reported? And identifying those problem spots so that we can get them fixed. So we kind of talked about this last week. First goal is to get the DMA zones completely operational. That'll allow us to focus in on certain areas that need more observation. One right now is Weddington Woods, so we're kind of using that as a pilot test project. I provided a little design narrative of what's going on. This particular subdivision suffers from about 78% to 80% water loss. Historically, it's been a problem for a long time. We've recently actually completed a survey from using satellite technology to detect leaks within the subdivision. I did provide that via Dropbox, but overall that survey provided 9 points of interest of leaks. We've finished, since the last meeting, we've finished actually investigating those leaks. Of the 9, we found 5. Of the 5, 1 was a significant leak. If you look at Beacon, you can go to the March 27th DMA zone 33. That one leak was a blown corp wide open. Nobody had called in. Was probably leaking for months or years, honestly. But fixing that one leak knocked water loss down 30 gallons a day in the subdivision. So I did some quick math. Per month, that was about a $2,500 improvement. The total survey cost $7,500, so just finding that one leak paid for the survey in about 3 months' time. As far as options on how to proceed, the satellite imagery, kind of like looking in a room at different seasons, taking pictures throughout the year. They've recommended doing it several times a year so you get different perspectives on leaks. That is a recommendation on how to proceed in these trouble spots, is one. Proceeding with a satellite, another satellite survey of leaks, and then identifying the hot spots or leaks of interest. 2, doing an acoustic survey, which would be a more traditional boots on the ground approach with valving, correlators, and handheld audio equipment. 3, most of the service lines and corps are probably the biggest problems in the subdivision. I did provide just a rough price on what it would look like to upgrade the whole subdivision as far as new service lines and corps go. So those 3 options in a troubled zone. And hopefully you got some time to read over it, and I'd happy to discuss some of those with you.
Well, let's discuss some of those, because right now, we spent $1.5 million, borrowed the money to do so, to get smart meters, which would detect flows. Zach, I would like you to explain why we can't identify with specificity where our leaks are occurring at this point.
So with the cellular reads, we can break the distribution system as a whole into subsections. But in order to get, if you know a problem, you can certainly start to divide that section up into problems with master meters for continuous monitoring. Right now, we're doing big picture pig zones of where we know leaks are. We can certainly continue to explore that and break those down into more chewable pieces as we move forward, but looks like you have a question.
I think you're off subject with what I'm asking. You have shown me that currently we are using our system, and it's broke into the term sections, not to be confused with the term DMA. By virtue of the fact that the Beacon smart meter system that we got, or the Badger meter system, which seems to be unable to load. I don't know if it's a slow condition or whatever. But gentlemen, what it's doing is giving us a snapshot, not of the sections, which we have measurements of what we're selling in that section, but we have no measurement of what's going into that, therefore to be able to deduct a water loss. That's driven off of a DMA. Now, if you look at the board minutes of this fine entity, over a year ago, there was discussions about changing it and being able to tie our billing system and the DMAs together. At this point, no action has been taken, as many other things that we have discovered. But at this point, we're underway. with both our billing system and trying to get everything, instead of being broken out into 15 or 18 sections, which part of one section is in this DMA and another part's in another DMA. So there's no way to basically utilize the technology that we got. If we tie it into DMA, we then will be able, with certainty, to be able to tell you that that DMA zone is losing this percentage, and will allow you to bullet point exactly what area is the highest priority, which typically would be the highest loss. But again, I'm telling you that it's a shame that we've known what we needed to do, or the board has known what needed to be done well over a year ago, yet no action has been taken.
Well, based on what information I have seen, and it sounds like really all we're doing right now is waiting on somebody to call and tell us we got a leak.
I think you pretty much just accurately
And that's
described.
just wrong.
So there's no, Washington Water Authority, operations has no system surveillance, boots on the ground, walking lines, surveying lines. You rely solely on a customer to call in a leak. Is that the only way, for the most part, that you're?
For the most
finding
part,
this?
I would agree. As they're going through work orders for the day, we do train them to look for wet spots, and if area of interest does pop, they do stop and check it out. But no, we do not have a formal survey program.
So Weddington Woods subdivision, we know it's a hot spot. Have we put boots on the ground and walked that
Yes.
entire line?
Yes, we have. That was part of the Astera satellite survey, in which we did the hot spots. We actually went in back and walked the whole thing to identify the leaks, and followed up with handheld listening devices on every service that was in a hot spot. And we did find some leaks that way too.
Do we have, Zach, do we have,
Larry,
areas
put your-
that we,
Put your mic down.
do we have areas that we, have fixed the leaks and there's reoccurring leaks in that same area later on?
All the time.
Why?
Aging pipe, you can fix a service line and then it breaks 2 feet away from it, several months later. If you're asking, do the repairs continue to leak or the existing
Well,
infrastructure?
Both.
Well, do the repairs continue to leak? Not usually, but that doesn't mean the system can't break 2 feet away.
Zach, you mentioned once before that, and most recently here, that we're basically reacted to somebody when they call in and say, hey, you got a leak at such and such location. That being said, what would you say would be the average response time in dealing with that leak?
1 to 2 weeks,
1 to 2 weeks.
unless it's system critical.
More specifically, can I refresh your memory that the first week I was involved in this entity, that the leak was reported at the junction of Arbor Acres and South Penalto Road in Tawnytown.
Yes, I remember.
So that was on or about late February. Can you tell me when that leak was actually repaired?
It was repaired earlier this week.
So that's a little more than 1 to 2 weeks.
I agree. That was a special one. Typically, on the average, we like to try to be about 1 to 2 weeks on non-critical leaks.
But as a matter of fact, when I asked again about it, there was no real record-keeping system that afforded us to where it ranked in priority. And so that's what we've tried to address, gentlemen. But again, we beat a dead horse, but until you develop a plan and act on the plan, nothing accomplishes it. And I think what we're looking at here are records that reflect exactly that fact. So with that, anybody else got any more comments for this? I can assure you, this has my complete attention and seems like it's an infection that my attention is gonna be involved in a lot of other people's. So, thank you, Jack. I would make one last comment. There's been some questions about worksheets and trends and so on and so forth. Perhaps add to your reoccurring items within your reports. I would suggest putting it in a spreadsheet so you could go tab to tab and do some historicals of what David was saying, what it was this month, what it was that month. We can look at trend lines like that until we get a better system in our DMA billing protocol in place. Also, add the service orders. Maybe it would be nice to know how many service orders has been completed in the past month and how many is on the books and how many leaks maybe we've got on the schedule and
Oh,
what's been
I
fixed.
like it, so.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Can I ask one more?
I have one more question.
Go ahead, Mr. Delozer.
Do we go and review our tank sites and all this to look for leaks around those facilities or anything? I mean, where you got big volumes of water?
Sure, all the tank sites, I mentioned the SCADA system earlier. I know the tank water levels on an instant basis. They do get, the tanks get looked at least weekly, just from daily operations going up there. More recently now, because of we're mowing and stuff, so we get to see it. So if you're asking if there's a big leak at a tank, yeah, there would be an opportunity to see those, yes.
Well, I seen a deal on the sanitation report talked about overflow. And how, tell us about overflow on
Sure.
those tanks.
Tank overflow. So before, some of the tanks were hydraulically driven, which means they didn't have a master meter controlling the pumps to fill said tank. So the pumps on occasion would overfill the tank, and then when they'd stop, the tank level would start to come down until the process starts over. Since then, all of our tanks are now on the SCADA system, so we can track those. Overflow's not typically an issue in the present system, but that was a historic issue moving in the past.
So those could malfunction, we could lose water that way.
That is a possibility if there's a malfunction. I don't know of any of recently, though.
Okay. Do they recommend those extensions out of the ground there as a site tube, or what do they recommend that for?
Can you be more specific? Extensions as to what?
24-inch extension for overflow out of the ground.
Coming from the tank, they want it 24 inches above grade?
I believe that's what it's.
Yeah, that's right. That way
Is
you
that
can't,
used for a site tube or what?
kind of like a gutter system or a side tube, sure. They need to be above grade to keep stuff from coming in from the ground level.
Okay.
Do all our facilities have that?
They do.
What about maintenance? I read some pretty disparaging remarks in one of the sanitary reports about maintenance logs, lack thereof. I mean, it seemed like I even asked for some, and there are none.
Maintenance in the past has been on an as-needed basis, I suppose.
Reactive, not proactive.
Reactive.
Not a, do you wait till your car quits running before you do some maintenance on it?
I do not, no.
My same question would be, how does water tanks different than that?
As part of the sanitary survey, those water tanks do need to be surveyed every 5 years. Did you
But
get
maintenance needs to happen a little more often than every 5 years, I
Sure.
would expect.
Sure.
So have we implemented any kind of routine plans at this point?
Not at this point, no.
Well, when do you think you might?
Sometime soon. I do not have a good answer for that.
Perhaps that'd be a good thing to follow up with the
Sure.
board and give us, I like to use the term no-fail dates, as you know. And,
Done very well.
because the fact of the matter is, you know, your car hadn't been serviced in the last 100,000 miles. And so how about just before it locks up, we start doing some maintenance on it? And we know what those are to be expected. Probably create and make a lot less questions the next time you come around. Okay, thank you. Item 6, engineers update on RDOT Highway 170 project. come forward, sir. State your name, rank, and serial number. Yeah, well, we won't do that. That,
Sorry, I don't have this for the monitors to keep them back.
could I interrupt you just for one moment? Because my, not right-hand girl, my left-hand girl aptly pointed out that there never was a formal motion and approval, I don't think, for the minutes, or for the, was it the financials?
Make a motion, we approve the financials as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, like sign. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Engineer, I'm sorry. Please introduce yourself to all of us, because you're the first Garver representative outside of Mr. Button we've seen.
Is there, okay, now you can hear me. My name is Larry Gregory. I work in our Rogers office. I work closely with Chris Bunton. He is still the manager for the client, for the board. I am the manager for this one particular project. Chris will usually be the one who's coming to these meetings, but he was tied up. So we met yesterday with Mr. Wagner and Mr. Johnston to go over the preliminary survey information that we gotten. Our crews had gone out a few weeks ago and we got all that drawn together. Based on that conversation, we got some better leads on the lines in the system. I'm gonna step out here where I can see this. So the project, as you probably know, goes from Clyde Carnes Road down to the southwest up to just north of, just south of, I believe that's Rainsong. And you have 12-inch line that runs from Clyde Carnes up to the north side of Martin High School. You have 2-inch from the northern end of your system down to Blue Sky. Okay. So we looked at the lines in relation to both the proposed right-of-way and the limits of construction. RDOT has right-of-way that's outside areas that are going to be disturbed. There are several spots along the 12-inch line, I guess along here and here, where your line is within the right-of-way, but based on the roadway design, that area is not going to be affected. So, in our experience, RDOT would not authorize any, not reimburse any relocations for that. There are areas, one down here at this curve, you've got a 12-inch line coming across, 8-inch line coming down. The road is going to cut across that corner. So that is all going to be reimbursed for relocating those lines. You've got drainage structures going in here, here, and here, where relocations will be authorized by RDOT. And then right here at this curve, once again, they're cutting off a big area and it's going to wipe out your line. What I've come up with, and these are all preliminary numbers, we've not actually designed anything yet, and we haven't talked to RDOT, but we're anticipating relocating about 420 feet of 12-inch pipe and 1,370 feet of other pipes. It says 8-inch on here because your specs are going to require the minimum size of the pipe to be 8-inch. That's standard among most water systems. So where you've got a 2-inch line that's going to be relocated, we're going to ask RDOT to pay for an 8-inch line. So, the project doesn't appear to be nearly as big as what we were afraid of. Our fee was based on what we thought the worst case scenario. And it was a hourly rate contract, so, it should be considerably lower than that in the end. But, we've just got several spots throughout where I think the previous engineer had really long stretches of relocation.
I got your timelines, and was expressed my discontent, in it in terms of the length of time it was gonna take to, determine an estimated probable cost for two reasons. Number one, if we're already in the location, we get no reimbursement. It's out of our pocket. And my first focal point, when I had a discussion with Mr. Button a couple of months ago, actually right after we first engaged you people, is that exactly how many feet that entailed. Do we, at this point, have that determined?
The closest thing we have is the numbers that are shown here.
Okay, so the within project limits are, is that 3,600 that is outside? What's reimbursable, what's not? Just,
This is coated pipe that's within the roadway project limits.
yeah,
This is pipe that needs to be relocated.
that we won't be, just break it to me gently, spare me the pain, show me the baby. What I want to know is the amount of line that we're going to pay completely out of our pocket. So I read 420 feet of 12-inch and 1,370 feet of 8-inch, is that correct?
I think that's total. I think RDOT's going to pay for all that. From what I can see, the only thing that is in the right of way that is going to need to be relocated is service lines and meters.
Okay, so we've got no main line that we're going to have, it's just service lines.
From what we can tell you.
Well, that's an improvement over our last conversations, well, maybe we talk longer and it gets better. Okay, so at this point, it looks like it's largely a reimbursable based off of 90, is it 90 or 95%?
I believe the original was 90. That was based
Okay.
on the linear feet that your previous engineer had prepared, because we had put that together. We had to do that right away.
Okay.
So that's where that number came from.
Yep.
If you're looking at service lines versus 12-inch and 8-inch pipe, it's going to be, I'd say, at least 95% reimbursable,
Okay.
guessing at this point.
So let me change gears here just for a moment. In your timelines, you were looking at, it's gonna take out to October before you had those actual numbers. We have a couple of gentlemen here that have some, close experience with this project, and that one works for Black Hills, which relocated lines, and the other one moved the lines, because he has his own excavation company.
Okay.
Now, rather than me, sometime I'm dyslexic in my hearing, so I'm gonna let Mr. Prince explain what process and how long, the time frame to get the costs and all that.
So, I was the project manager over this job. The prints were sent to us, back 5, 6 years ago, however long this project was ago. From the date of we received these plans to engineering, cost estimation, I believe we had to wait on a little bit of material. We had a turnaround on this in about 6 to 8 weeks. I know you have some other approvals from the health department and things that have to be done, but that includes the permitting process and everything. RDOT should be already on board on all permits for this, so I would see no delays on timelines of getting this ready for boots on the ground, if you will.
Right. Well, this schedule was put together before we had the survey data. We didn't know the extent You know, it's gonna take a lot longer if we're relocating 5,000 feet of pipe, versus 400 feet of pipe. So,
With that, let me just make one simple request then. Now that you know what you're dealing with,
update it?
give us some numbers. PDQ,
Yes, sir.
yesterday would be fine, but tomorrow's acceptable.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the engineer? Okay, thank you.
All right.
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
On your 8-inch line, where are you substituting? What size line are you substituting that with?
So right here,
Oh, up on top, right there. The 6.
2 inch to an 8 inch.
No, right over in the table right here.
This is what's out there in
Right.
the ground right now.
Right.
So we're saying that of the 6 and 2 inch that needs to be relocated, those are gonna go up to an 8 inch. So between the 6 and 2, it's 1,307 feet.
Okay. So would we go from an 8 to a 2? Would we go from an 8 to a 2 in some areas?
It'll go from a 2 to an 8 to a 2. The plan would be to, set the 8 inch up so that you can tie onto it without making new taps.
Okay.
Or you can do plug tees, plug valves, that'll let you make that connection real easy.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. For the next item 7, Zach, is there a way to turn on the water service boundary? I know the white dotted lines on this screen up here are the county lines, but I'm not familiar enough with
Sure.
your stuff there.
Oh, it's all good. You want the
No,
cities
no,
on
no,
there?
no, I don't want the sections. I want the service area for WWA.
Well,
service
I don't have
boundary.
an overall.
Okay.
But if you use the sections, you can see the overall boundary.
Not necessarily, would you? Because let me show you where I'm talking about.
Okay.
You've got area up in here.
That's right.
So that, okay. All right. As we have talked in the past, I think the board has been unanimous in their expression that the name of Washington Water Authority implies the significance that this entity was formed to provide potable water to rural areas within the county of Washington. However, for whatever reasons, over the years, it seemed like that the prior management had the desire to become the biggest landmass of water service boundaries in Arkansas. Of course, he had a ways to go, but the point is that the board has talked at great length about these, and our desire is to service Washington County, not Benton County, not Crawford County, not Madison County, but Washington County. As you see on this board, this, where the cursor is up here, this line, it goes down here and cuts back west and goes south and cuts back west. That's the Washington, excuse me, the Washington-Benton County line. And WWA currently, where the mouse is moving, since we don't have the boundary lines up, has this entire area pretty much out in here as a claimed, keyword, claimed service area. However, as you note, these are the lines. We have no line in this particular area. The city of Tawnytown, which lies back over here, has connected somewhere out in this area to the 2-ton main line, which is the same main line that WWA connects to a little further down. But they have a brand new, it's large, I'm thinking it's 16 inches maybe, but it's a line that connects from the two-ton main line to feed their connection to the two-ton water system, and of course, which includes tanks and such. There's been numerous citizens in this area. One most recently contacted me and said, "Hey, I've got a Town line on my property. My well is going bad. I approached sometime back washing the water and got crickets for an answer as to, since this is explained by Town was their service area, when I could expect water, or how could I go about getting water. Again, answer crickets. In the meantime, a few years back, shortly after putting their new main line in the ground, the city of Town went to the Arkansas Natural Resources Commission and requested to claim this particular area. It was met with a very terse rejection by WWA's management at that time. Basically, not no, but hell no. That's our territory. We've had it forever. And even though we don't have lines there, we ain't giving up any of our territory. So the matter died on the vine. When we came on the scene, I was contacted by Town again, and I told them just what I've stated on the record here, that our intentions were to go to rural Washington County and try to provide water there. We had no intentions, long-term or short-term, to do anything within this area. And perhaps the prudent thing to do was for our entity, which under federal statutes has the right to hold on to territory, regardless if you got territories there. But it don't make sense to sit there and fight over a piece of ground that you can't plow, so to speak. And so with that said, we've talked in past meetings, and I would like the board to once again visit this, because I think we're in agreement, but I want to have a clear record that, because I talked to the RDA board a week or so ago at their meeting, and they have no problems giving up this particular area, and yet we're with the operation, but I want a clear position taken by the board, because it's been presented to Town. I think it would be adequate to say, pretty energized to get this done. Their city council will be taking this up. They go through a committee of a whole meeting, then it's put on the council, but probably within the next month, they're basically saying, yeah, we'd like to have it. In the meantime, I'm getting the final details from some people at ANRC of what required publishing or whatever's having to do. Town's engineers are generating a shape file, so there can be a map attached. But from ANRC standpoint, they said before, and they're still saying, hey, we don't care. If y'all can work it out, we're not here to say, no, it makes no sense for you to keep it. But if you want to keep it, you're protected under federal statutes to do so. And so does our board want to keep this area, or do we want to move forward with ceding this to Town?
I have some questions, if you don't mind.
Answer away.
It's in the Town planning area, right?
Yes, matter of fact,
How far outside the city limits is it?
a big chunk, I think Town comes out, I'm not sure if their planning area goes past the county line, but it's a big part of this area. That was the other thing, it's in Town's planning growth area.
But it goes into Benton County.
I'm not sure, because I don't have their maps in front of me, but I know a good
So-
portion at the discussion the other night, it was mentioned it was.
My last question, is there any way we can get some positive revenue from this deal?
From what? We don't know. We don't own any line to get revenue from.
Hey.
I think the answer would be no.
Oh, darn it.
Now, it's an entirely different, and I want, since you do bring that point up, I think it's very good that we very clearly state this. In the meantime, Tawnytown, ask us, because YouTube can be heard by anybody, but as you recall, we've talked about it's not a rural water system in our, at least, viewpoint, that we have a whole lot of lines within city limits. As urban sprawls occurred, a good number of Washington Water's area has been annexed. And of course, we've talked about the double prong problems. We don't have to worry about ISO, and our financing makes it prohibitive that we could get adequate line size financing to give a fire flow. But cities, on the other hand, they're pretty well hammered by ISO ratings. And so they have asked, would you consider selling some of this? And of course, the state statutes provide that the method of that would be our engineers and their engineers sit down in good faith and try to value, and I'm not sure what all the criteria is, it's above my pay grade, but once that's hammered out, if it's hammered out, we could sell that, and then if there's anything left over after a requirement, certainly by some of our bondholders, pay that down, we would go back out into the rural areas, which Zach pointed out one the other day, that doesn't have water but wants water, and we're actually, or not us, but the board prior to us has actually put a restriction on new services within those areas. And so it would be foolhardy to sit here and not try to do something. So I hope I didn't take up too much of your time there, Mr. Bollinger, but the question still remains. I'd like the board to be on record saying we're good with this ceding of territory, I'll refer to it as, because there's no assets to sell.
I so move.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second that the WA board sanctions the ceding of certain territories. I'll describe, because I don't have a map right now, west and north of the Benton and Washington County westernly borders to be ceded to the city of Tawnytown for their service. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. There's been, in the last few months, according to some, a lot of changes. Would you agree? But I just wanted to kind of go over some of those. So not that I'm not real sure that the board has to do this. I'm just asking it as a practical matter. But terms of services, more particularly at section 2.23 and 2.31, that has more to do with the billing cycles. We were before doing it on the same day each month. Of course, the same day sometimes falls on a Saturday, so the staff met together and decided, and it's there for your viewing in your packet, I believe, but if not, it's been provided before, that we start doing it on some reoccurrence. And what cycle did y'all come with? Third Thursday, or what day? The fourth. The fourth Wednesday will be the finite billing date. And of course, that'll vary your billing cycles a few days from month to month, but it keeps it close. So that's one thing. Second item B, water applications. Encountered a bit of a dilemma the other day in that, again, workflows, keyword that I like to use, but when someone comes in and wants water from Washington Water, the question is, what's the policy, what's been the procedures, and how we do all of this? And so I talked with the staff, and essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a man comes in and says, I live at such and such address, and can I get water? Well, at that point, there were certain items. Did he own the line or the land? Where it was in relationship to a line, or if there was a line in the general area. And did he have an easement if his particular property was landlocked? And after that was preliminarily checked at the front desk, then it was brought to Mr. Johnson's desk, and then the question was, what was the action time? I don't know, but now that we have the GIS and everything up there, my first reaction to that was, why does it take anything longer than a day or two to give the man an answer? Yes, no, we can or we can't. We had one instance where a guy had asked for it, and 7 weeks later, he had heard nothing from us. So that's kind of what was the stimulus to making some changes. So right now, if somebody comes into the office, they have to have all the criteria I just said. I've already mentioned one of the other criteria that they had to have is we had to collect bore fees, which we turned around then and subcontracted bore fees. That made no sense, so we don't collect bore fees anymore. But the same thing happens, and then if the man is determined, and one area was it the hog area we talked about that had a moratorium is passed by the board on meters because of low volumes or something that affected.
Highway 156 is probably the most
Okay.
famous.
Okay. Anyway, there's some areas of our system that do have very poor flows and supply. So the only other thing that would be done is after the ladies who would take all of this, tell the guy have to do, he has to cross the road. Well, that's going to take him some period of time, whatever he works out with a contractor. But during that period of time, we've got more than adequate time to determine if this is a low flow area. So there's no chance that, somebody can say, well, you say it, well, you didn't say it, but we got time to clarify that if it needs be. That's one, the second change. Third change, which garnered a lot of conversation from individuals, is plumbing applications. Now, we've already cleared up the fact in prior meetings about plumbing inspections and who did that, and we've finally come to grips that the state law says that a municipality has clear and present rights to inspect and issue permits, not to be confused with a plumbing permit application inside our area outside city limits. Historically, and again, as many things that have been placed in this operation, I can't figure a good reason why, but it was mandated that a licensed plumber, not a plumber secretary, not a homeowner, but a licensed plumber was the only person that could physically have to come to the Washington Water office to get a plumbing permit. Nowhere can I find in state code any requirements as such. Many cities are already doing it, and guess what? We're doing it now, that a plumbing application is available online. A plumber can pull it down, or his office staff can pull it down, fill it out, call us with a credit card, and we can issue a plumbing permit for him to get on with his way. Item D, RPZ enforcement policies. We had a number of customers in our system that had RPZs. And in fact, the capability within our system to charge them so much a month for having an RPZ. And the reason for that, supposedly, keyword supposedly, was to afford the expense that we would then send staff personnel to go out and test an RPZ. Now, to test an RPZ, you have to be certified, just like a plumber has to be certified to do plumbing. But there's a number of those, and no other water system that I'm aware of has staff or tries to test somebody's RPZ. There's a licensed plumber, and they do, according to health department standards, have an annual requirement of proving it's in working order. This year, we started that process, but we also stated in the notice that was sent out that no longer would we be testing RPZs, and we gave a link to a number to the state health department that has a list of Washington and Benton County certified testers, and that people going forward do that. During the meantime, and this is what I wanted y'all all to have clear understanding about this, we discovered some connections that went like this. The water service to the house was teed off of somewhere before it got to the house, and a RPZ device was connected to a irrigation system. Well, the only problem is that most of those did not have a lockable feature that if the RPZ was out of service, that it could be locked out, so as if an individual wanted to reconnect the RPZ, yeah, you got an air gap when you take the RPZ out of it, but you had no way to shut the water off, except shut the man's house water off. So we are now conducting investigations to find out how many more of these. We've already dealt with a few, but how many more of these are like that? And the customers are given the opportunity to make a decision to install a locking device, and if they're not done by June 1st, then we will take action as already outlined under our provisions to shut the water off at the house, because all you have to have a cross-connection incident is put that RPZ back in place. You got no way to shut it off, and you still got the same danger as if you never had it. So I know that's probably not going to make some people happy, because historically it's that, but that's what we're going to be doing, and I wanted y'all to all be aware of it in case you get a few calls on that. Next item's road crossings. We've already covered that. We're out of the road crossing business. And finally, workflow process. I related to that, but right now, every single action dealing with field operations clears through a common point. And we're also implementing a e-filing type process where instead of us filling it out and handing it to a field rep to attend to, it goes to them electronically. So that's been put in place. But with that all said, gentlemen, I just wanted to relate to all of those items because I didn't want anybody to say, well, you know, they're doing this, that, and that, because we are new, we're all new. If there's anything that you think we need to tweak, we'll be glad to do that going forward, but I'd just like ratification if we could have some sort of a motion that these changes in process are understood, sanctioned, and approved by this board.
I so move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. Item 9 is, we had a meeting, was it this week or last night, with communities? Last week with Community Unlimited. Now, that's a nonprofit, federally funded, as I understand it, maybe perhaps with some state funding as well, that does certain functions, one of which is small systems as us. They conduct rate studies. And so, to no cost, I might add, now there's people who are glad to do rate studies for you, but they like to charge for it too, including Garver's group back here. But never look a gift horse in the mouth, so we said sure. And so they gathered a certain amount of information and probably be gathering some more, but that's underway. The second item that is interesting that they will provide is a Act 605 training. As you know, all the board members that have been here less than 10 years, which is all of us, have to have a training, and I'm not sure if that training is 1 or 2 days or 4 hours. Do you know, Zach? I think it's a day of training, and they will work with us as scheduling, but what I'd like y'all to all consider, they were talking sometime in June, but I didn't know if we wanted to do everybody at one time or if we could do it half of us one time and half of us the next. Of course, we'll do it at our office because it's not going to require that big a meeting room, and this room's pretty busy. But we'll, if you could, everybody kind of, I'll shoot some dates when this guy gives me the actual dates back to y'all, and just, we'll get all we can the first go around, and those that may have vacations or whatever that's out of that, we'll do that later. And finally, this individual was, the term I believe he used was capital improvement schedules, which officially we've got a very loose one, but we need to get probably a little more structured in that matter, and Zach's working on that, but that basically is nothing more than saying, okay, what's your big ticket items that you're going to be doing in the next 12 months, and estimated cost, and so before we leap, we know it. We think we got the money to deal with it. So that's just, I guess, more or less information. I don't think perhaps we do need approval, but certainly a ratification for what we've already done to get a free rate study done by these people, because we're required also under Act 605 to do this ever so frequently. And also, as you may or may not be aware, Two-Ton will be implementing at the beginning of next year new increases, so we're going to have to increase our rates anyway. So would we have anybody make a motion to ratify what I've explained?
I so move.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second by Mr. Bollinger and a second by Mr. Chambers that the ratification is done for the water rate study. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay, item 10, Mountainburg is undertaking a process, and let me get down to that part of our area. They are extending some water lines, and as we've talked, we have some lines. This is the Crawford, Washington County area. And I've sent you all the information that explains and outlines what Hawkins Weir, I believe it is, firm is doing some work with the city of Mountainburg to extend water, and they're requesting, and we had a meeting last week, that they would be allowed to put a master valve and subfeed in one area, maybe 10 customers, and at least current customers, and another area I never did really understand exactly. But not to be terse, but to the point, because I don't believe beating the bush is going to gain anybody a lot. And based off of previous stated reasons that we've got, even though it seems like I told them they still wanted to run some hydraulic studies, and yes, we can produce water for 10 people, as Zach has provided an email. But I just want to be sure that I'd heard the board's position, and if it was still that we didn't have a desire to extend more into other counties when we've got our own county lacking for certain areas, even though they were going to pay the expense of all of it. And even though it's 10 customers today, there's maybe 20 once they find out that good deer hunting spot that they've got needs a cabin on it and needs water. But I guess my point is yes or no to the request is the action before you. So I'll let y'all ask your questions or do whatever you think.
I'd move to decline Mountain Berg's request for a master meter.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you. The next item that came up, as with any entity like this, there was an organization chart, but it didn't remotely look like what was on the ground, so to speak, when we got there. So I thought maybe it would be best for all of us to kind of have a general understanding. So I put an organization chart together before you and sent it out to you. As you know, right now we're in a general manager vacancy. The proposal that I have for this organization chart is to have 2 direct reports to that individual, whoever it may be, and it may be one of these 2 people if they want to apply, and we think that they're the most highly qualified individuals to be applied. But right now, staff engineer, Mr. Zach, and office manager, Miss Stephanie, would report to the general manager. Stephanie would have, as she currently has, 3 CSRs, levels 1, 2, and 3, directly reporting to her. Zach, on the other hand, would be taking some, I don't know if it was new responsibilities, because I didn't really ever understand exactly how the field services reported to Zach prior to our board, but soon after I found out that he had 1 direct report, and I said, that didn't make sense from my limited experience in management, but so now we have basically 5 direct reports to Zach. We have a tech service / meter tech, call it what you may. I call it a tech service 1. And then we have 2 other individuals that could do essentially what and we're in the process of putting more clarification on our job documentations and job descriptions, as somebody's going to call it. But then we have a tech service 2 and a tech service 3. So 3 individuals that could do locates, set meters, a host of other things, but primarily they wouldn't be constructing lines and things of that nature. Then we have a field service team, so to speak. Currently, we have team lead that was previously over the first 3 people I talked about, plus this. So that individual would be in charge of 2 field tech laborers / equipment operators. So there'd be a 3-man team. Then I discovered, after being here for a while, a number of field operation functions, most particularly the tapping of main lines for new services, was being done after signing a few hefty bills from a subcontractor that we'll discuss later. But anyway, a subcontractor was doing that functions, and in fact was using WWA's equipment to do it. So kind of paralleling our utility to, let's say, Ozark Electric or Black Hills Energy, both of those entities use a mixture of quote, company-owned field teams as well as subcontractors. Mr. Speed certainly is a prime contractor for, used to be Black Hills. And so there's pros and cons to each one of them. I provided y'all some cost information, but it seems logical that the field subcontractor, who currently is using 2 people, not 3, but that's the way it's structured, he would be a direct report to Zach. So all of a sudden you've got 5 individuals that would report to Zach with the 2 field techs underneath Mr. Byram. Again, this is what I propose. I'm open for discussion to this point or a motion to accept. I yield to you.
I have a question. I'm gonna show my ignorance here. What's the difference between a service tech and a field tech?
Basically, from what I can tell, not a whole lot of difference. It's semantics. Tech service is the term that I use to define the individuals that are not actually doing, quote, construction-related functions. As I said, they're setting a meter. They're not constructing the line or the yoke to put the meter in there. They're putting it in there. They're reacting to 811 calls coming in to locate Washington Water's line in a certain area. Zach, is there other functions that those type individuals do?
Primarily, that's correct. They do auxiliary functions like water quality testing and
Yeah.
some pump maintenance and stuff like that.
But again, broad brushing it, nothing related to construction. And then field service or field subcontractors actually do repairs, leaks, constructions of service lines, things of that nature.
So the field tech are the, equipment operators also for us?
Yeah, they can do. I mean, some are qualified to operate machinery, some
Okay.
qualified to operate a shovel, I guess. But I mean, maybe both of them could do both jobs.
Okay.
I refer to them as labor, but I mean, everybody likes to have a title. So I mean, if we want to call them special guy one, special guy two.
I just didn't know
I mean,
what,
whatever.
I didn't know what their job responsibilities were.
Yeah, and I understand that, and unfortunately, there has been a very poorly crafted job description, which that's forthcoming. So
Okay.
at this point, I'm just trying to get boxes filled.
I make a motion that we accept the, current organization chart as presented.
I'll second, and I have another motion when this vote's over.
You have a question before we discuss it?
No,
Okay, I thought I couldn't understand you, I'm
I
sorry.
have another motion before we end this topic.
Okay, so I think we have a motion and second to accept the organization chart as presented, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And thank you.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion that we take all necessary steps to advertise and collect applications for general manager.
Okay,
Second.
all right. Do we have a second? You had a second. Okay, motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Item 12, discussion of a field contract, field subcontractors contract. Let's see, how do I get back here? Okay. This contract, of course, has been reviewed and legalized or legalese or whatever you call a lawyer to do to a contract, but it's been blessed, I should say, by our attorney. And you'll slide down to the bottom, the schedules of services that are related to it have been put forth. And I would say that the compensation schedule was a work product of Mr. Speed and discussions with the excavator, and I could think of no better individual in our group to have done that, since he has firsthand knowledge and years of experience with working with that. And as you can see before you, compensation is broken out into several pieces, and this is the manner in which the subcontractors would be paid off of this rate structure. The individual that has currently been doing this already, so it's not like a unknown quantity, and I think has a pretty good reputation, or I don't think WWA would have continued to be using him. Mr. Willis of Willis Excavation has looked over this, and if the board allows me to do so, we will ink a contract to formalize and eliminate, well, why is he using our equipment, and maybe some other questions might be coming about, and have it on top of the table what the guy's getting paid. We review it annually and adjust compensation accordingly. But this will allow us then to have two fully functional field service crews to attack leaks, taps, anything related. Whereas right now, we've kind of got a halfway. The other thing to consider is the personnel policies being reviewed, but there's a lot of, quote, accrued time off, paid holidays or paid time off, whatever you want to call it, which also makes it difficult in scheduling some of this. So this way, we've got, I think, fully staffed to what was the optimal desire in the original budget that y'all have already reviewed and revised. So with that, I'll ask for any discussion or a motion.
Do we have a plan B if this guy's out of commission for whatever reason?
We could have any number of subcontractors if we wanted to have them, but at this point, that hadn't seemed to be an issue, but certainly we're not limited to the number of contracts we have, but at this point, I see no reason for it, or no need for it. I understand your question is what if, and if what if, there's other contractors, and so
With that thought in mind, I make a motion we approve as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the contract as presented between WWA and Willis Excavation, or Excavating, LLC. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. I think I had a typo on the agenda at this point. What I was meaning to say, well, we can take it up either place. Let's just take up item 13 as presented. GPS tracking is not a new technology that WWA is not familiar with. However, when I got there, it became abundantly apparent that it was a nice shiny toy that had maybe a purpose when they got it sometime last year, but has been vastly underutilized. In that, I'm familiar with Fleetmatics, which was a precursor to Verizon Reveal, as they call it now, which is GPS location devices on not only vehicles, but other rolling stock and assets such as trailers and track holes and so on and so forth. But when I reviewed it, we had 10 items, but several items that certainly, for an example, maybe if you buy it new, $75,000 Mini X, which is a nice thing to steal, but it had no tracking device on it. Trailers, same way. So we're expanding by, I don't know, 10 or 15 pieces in addition to what we got. The other thing that was not being utilized at all for, and one of the bigger benefits of this type of device is setting up maintenance schedules, you know, change the oil every so many miles, rotate the tires every so many miles. It's given us features, or can give you features that if a dashboard comes on and says check engine or something of that nature, you're notified of that instantly, but only if you've got it set up to do so, and we didn't have none of that. So we're in the process of, with the help of Stephanie and Zach, we're getting that up to date on what we've got. But what I would like to have is board action saying that anything above and I picked 10,000 just out of the air, we can make it any number you want, but anything that's got a fair market value above that will have some kind of a location device on it. Now, although it's not in this section, but a similar section, let me, before I ask for comments, another thing I encountered was that we had a number of cell phones. Seemed like every field individual had a cell phone. And I certainly had no problem with that because communications is essential, especially in times of emergencies and stuff. The only problem, I had an occasion to go out there one day, walking around aimlessly like I oftentimes do, and I get in a truck and a phone rings. And it wasn't my phone. And I look around and over kind of off the dashboard, there was a phone there. And so I approached Zach, and since this was our, what we call on-call truck, meaning that the truck goes home with somebody every night, but it doesn't necessarily be assigned to anybody, which makes no sense because whoever takes it home's got a phone. So here's a phone in the truck. So what purpose was it serving? But anyway, we've now got it on charger, and I think Stephanie is using it because I didn't want her using her phone because she occasionally gets emergency calls and certainly shouldn't be on her dime. That being said, to all of that, those phones are paid for by this utility and the ratepayers. Consequently, they ought to be an asset, and not that somebody would steal an iPhone, but it's easy to lose one of them suckers. And yes, you can say, find my phone and all that kind of stuff, but there's another service that I'm familiar with. There may be, I'm sure, countless others, but Life 360 is an app that put on the phone that tracks your phone just like your vehicle. So the chances of losing a phone or something like that is greatly diminished. So I would also like in this to wrap that into there. And finally, kind of off the walls, but, or the title, I should say, I believe parity and uniformity is important in any time a class of employees has responsibilities, meaning that right now, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's only one field service individual outside of the on-call truck that takes their vehicles home every night. And I don't think that is proper, and I would ask the board to voice their actions, that the policy is put in place that all company vehicles, with the exception of management and the on-call vehicle, are garaged at and left at Washington Water's office every night. So everybody has the same provisions. Again, we will have one vehicle that is a service vehicle that will be at a rotation because on-calls are not the same guy every week. One guy's got it a week, the next guy's got it another week, and all that. That will be in the field, live, ready for action. And you've got phones, so if we got an all hands on deck event like Goose Creek, certainly everybody's gonna have to come pick their truck up. But I mean, that's no different than any other thing. So that all included in the GPS item 13, it'd be GPS on anything over, I say 10,000, y'all set a higher limit. The other thing would be Life 360 on the phones, and the final thing is garaging all vehicles with the exceptions noted at the shop. Now, discussion?
Sounds like we need a couple different motions there to cover that. I make a motion to cover part of it, that we use necessary technology to track assets as needed. That would cover your 360 and your GPS.
Not necessarily, because that would mean the word asset could mean a $50 printer or whatever. I mean, so if you could refine that.
You also don't need a GPS on a generator that's sitting out there somewhere that's worth $12,000.
Maybe not.
If it's not moving, you can
If it's
secure
on a
it
trailer,
down.
you
So
certainly do. So, I'm just saying, maybe rephrase your motion, it would be a little clearer, because I think any asset above a specified value, you know, as needed, well, that's subjective. Let's put a dollar amount.
Those things that need tracking, yes, okay.
And,
So,
and the other thing to consider is, if you're gonna break this into motions, which I concur with you 100%, GPS tracking devices are noted as such. Life 360 is an app, so GPS tracking devices fit into a value of a particular item. Life 360 approaches to phones, which can vary anywhere between $75 burner phone to
okay,
1,100.
let's break it down into
Okay.
several motions, then, okay.
All right,
I make a motion that we use GPS to track those, assets above $10,000.
okay, we have that motion. Do we
second.
have a second?
Second.
All in
Second.
favor?
All those, aye?
Aye.
I make a motion that we use Life 360 to, establish on our cell phones in order to track those.
Second.
Motion, second. Who was the second by? Okay, Nathan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Now, the motion for company equipment,
Company vehicle.
company vehicles, okay. So you said, if I understand you correctly, management and on-call vehicle would be the only two that could be driven home, so to speak, and not parked at night, off-duty hours at the shop. Okay, I so move that.
Second.
Second.
Second by Delozer. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Under board member comments, y'all's turn.
I've got more questions for Zach if I can.
Sure.
Zach, do you track percent of overtime by pay period?
We can. I can't say that's a number I look at or have been looking at recently.
What was the question? You were away from.
Let me rephrase my question. Do you know what the percent of overtime was last week?
I do not off the top of my head.
Do you have any idea what it runs on a regular basis?
Honest answer, no.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have overtime?
Yes, we do have overtime. The system runs 24/7.
Certain people. We have currently 3 salaried people, which that's something else that'll be addressed. We've got Stephanie's salary, Zach's salary, and Darren's salary. Everybody else is hourly. Any more?
Is there a set amount of hours per week? Normal work schedule?
We have a 40-hour work week for the hourly people. But Zach may not know, but Mr. Bollinger, it runs about 5% overtime, is what it's been running. Mr. Bollinger, are you with us? Okay. Well, once you're back in the group here, you asked Zach a question about hours of overtime, and it was about 5%. 5%? Yeah. Yeah. I can get you a more complete detail. Matter of fact, Stephanie can pull that up in a heartbeat, but it's about 5%.
So is that usually the person that's on call on the weekend?
Yeah, it's predominantly.
Yeah.
We have very little overtime outside of that, but, you know, every time you hit the clock after 5 o'clock, go out and fix a water leak or whatever the call may be.
Yeah, so, some leaks, if they break and somebody's out of service, we go out and fix it right then. So it kind of depends situationally on what happens in the field.
How many known leaks did you say you had?
I've got 10 right now.
Man, I think if I were in your position, I'd be burning some overtime to fix some leaks.
Question. So when you're, somebody is on call, so you just have one person on call? How does that
I have one field representative, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is he responsible in getting hold, because he can't do anything by himself?
Uh-huh.
Is he responsible to get a hold of the other field techs to
He,
come help him?
he elevates that to Darren or me, and then those get dispersed. We make a judgment call as to whether it needs to be fixed now, or if it waits till the next day.
Okay.
And then we coordinate, if it does need to be fixed now, what we need to do.
Okay.
Any more comments from the board? Chairman's comments. The only thing, and I was gonna bring this up earlier, but we touched on the fact that there's perhaps sparse, maintenance records. We have generators and how many different, we got 13 tanks, is that correct?
Yes.
And in the event of power outages, are our generators gas, diesel, diesel or electric?
Diesel.
They're diesel. Okay, and so of the tanks that we've got, which would include the tower tanks like in Town and Elm Springs and other places, how many tank sites do we have?
Water storage tanks.
That's the only kind of tanks I hope we got.
Right. Yeah, 13.
How many?
13
13.
off the top of my head, yep.
And how many have standby generators?
4.
Okay. So there's 4 generators in the field. We don't know when they've been serviced last, but we're entertaining, as you've already requested, and I've sent you a second request to reach out to the other generator service person that's local to get on some kind of a routine with that. The question then becomes, the need for generators, look to me like, would be not exclusive to 4 tanks. Wouldn't we need every site to have a generator? Yes, no?
Not necessarily.
Okay?
I did talk to the health department about it to see if there was a requirement for pump stations to have generators this morning. There's not a requirement. However, if it does go down, we are responsible for providing backup power. For the pump sites that do not have generators, that is through rental process currently.
Well, if there's a requirement to provide backup power, short of a bunch of Peloton bicycles hooked to a belt, and all of us coming down and ride for a while, how else would we provide power?
Rental generators? Yeah.
So I'm back to the question. Not all of them need it. So which ones of those doesn't require having a generator? We've got 13. We've only got 4, so that leaves 9. So is there some of those 9 that we just don't ever need to have a generator there?
They could at some point if there's an emergency. They all run off of pumping stations, so
Yep.
eventually without electricity they would go dry.
But my limited electrical knowledge, you don't just bring a generator to an operation like that and plug it in and set it go. It's got to be plumbed and ready to go with a double throw switch so you don't have back feeds to the power grid and all that. Oh, we got a lot of generators, but that's another subject that I'm going to bring up after this. So let's finish this discussion before we get into the fact that numbers and quantities of generators is not a problem. We got plenty. We've got 9, I think, just happen to be out there. So while I'm on that subject, can you tell us about those 9 generators we got, Zach?
And they're sitting out in the yard right now. Were purchased 12, 15 years ago through military surplus.
Yeah. And we think maybe, well, at least when I first talked to you, Zach, you said 2 of them might actually work. And the rest of them were spare parts, but I couldn't get a straight answer. Not that you were trying to deceive me, but I couldn't get a find out answer when's the last parts we stole off of them. So in summary, I had some junk dealers look at it and they've got very little salvage value, but like that backhoe, that the tires are dry rotted and it's got about a 30-degree tilt to it because it's got a flat on the other side. And that pristine front end loader that we've got, that's got more gourd vines running up through it and spider webs and everything, that looks like it was only used just maybe last century sometime. We've got several items like that, but if you need some generators, we'll make you a deal, I think.
You make it.
I make a motion not to put those items on GPS.
What items? The generators.
The ones that are.
Yeah, I don't think that was not included
Oh,
in the
okay, I just want to make sure.
I got something I'd like to suggest. So they do make a mobile generator big enough to, and what Zach was pointing out is you rent them. We would have to be prepared and have at each site a
Have it
plug-in where you come, you rent the generator, come up and you just plug that generator and it goes. So instead of having generators for all 13 sites, which we only have 4, if we were to purchase one of those, or maybe even 2, and I may be wrong, but the chances of everybody being without electricity at the same time, all our pump stations, we could have 2 mobiles that have a maintenance schedule. Somebody, these generators you can, and I'm sure the ones in the field do, they start by themselves once a day. But that would be something, of course, the expense of a mobile generator, the size that we need, is a little more expensive than having a stationary generator. But the purpose would be you hook onto it, you take it out. It's on a trailer, you take it out, park it, and that's our backup plan.
I think the minimum size to that point was a 30 kW, and the largest one I saw was a 60, is that correct?
30 and 50 are the most common. We do have 3 pump stations that would need 125 kilowatt.
Is that one of the 9 or?
One of the 9, yes.
Those, that's part of the 9. So we would need 125 kW, at least that size.
Yes.
And maybe a second one of a smaller nature to accommodate. But in addition to that, each of the 9 sites would have to be, quote, plumbed to receive a generator input with a double throw switch and everything that's required to do that. So you could just basically drag it in there and plug it in. And then the only thing you would have to worry about is an ice storm like you recently had, where I understand there was a little consultation by some individuals about how we're going to get power up there and back and forth, because that's the only downside to a portable one. But you can't cover 100%, but you can cover 90% of your chances of things being out. So I don't think this takes an action, but if I'm hearing it, the fact that Mr. Speed said perhaps we need to get some prices on maybe two generators, and certainly whichever we can find to do their service, and also get a second bid, not only for maintenance, but for installations, plumbing, everything, so we're generator ready, I guess would be the term to use.
I got a question.
All right.
Is there a contractor that we could have on contract that owns generators?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's contract, well, I know firsthand, Hill Electric is a certified generator service technician, as well as a dealer. I don't know what company he's with, but he's certified. I didn't buy my generator from Hill Electric, but I had a portable one on my tractor that was a 30 kW, and they serviced it. So
Yeah, I'm just thinking, do we actually own, or because there's companies out there, I'm pretty sure that owns the generators, several generators, and they actually contract out for emergency reasons.
Generator supercenter, somewhere like that is what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah.
It would be worth a phone call, I would assume, that they would work something out like that.
well, I mean, we'll do whatever y'all say, but it's been my experience that Huggen Hall comes to mind because I happen to know the guy that's over that division. for special events, you know, you got a tent for 500 people and you need air conditioning and generators to run it. But the problem that I see with that, for them to hold that back to you, because guess who's else is going to be calling? Everybody else that needs generators. Chicken farmers are required. You probably can tell us something about generators with 8 poultry houses the size you got. So you know, it's a catch-22, you know, and but I don't know any other way to approach it. I don't think we can get a contract from anybody that would be cost-effective, because they're not going to hold a generator back. If they got 5 people needing a generator, it's first come, first served. Been my experience with them.
Zach, one more question. When's the last time those generators been run at those stations?
The ones that are actually out in the field operating, they get run monthly.
Okay.
Once when?
Monthly.
Why not every week? The one at my house, the one at Chicken, the one at Hatcheries, I don't know anybody that don't run a generator on a test run for every week.
We can get it on a weekly schedule. That's not a
I
problem.
mean, isn't that what y'all kick yours on that? Yeah, we certainly need to have them on a test mode. And since we paid so much close attention to maintenance, and they're running off diesel, could we know what the fuel level is? When's the last time we checked the fuel level?
They do report into the office on fuel levels, battery lives, and stuff like that.
So we do have a electronic report. I've never seen that, so
Yes, we
I
do.
asked the question. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get some quotes, Mr. Speed, on those items. That's all I had. Unless there's something else, I'll call the meeting adjourned. And I'll
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Yep, okay. Motion
Second.
and a second. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
All those in favor, aye?
All in favor? Aye. Because if you were gonna say that, I was gonna leave anyway.